Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find all the stuff that we do on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. If you aren't following us on Instagram and TikTok, you should. A lot of fun stuff that gets put up there, all the shorts and reels and stuff like that. And you can get the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We always appreciate your 5-star reviews. We got to keep ahead of Brock and Salk. You know, I have to be able to hold that over those guys when I see them. I think we're at a 4.8, which I really appreciate. So let's keep that going up. And if you want ad-free, ads are annoying. I get it. You can get ad-free audio, patreon.com/hawkblogger, which also gets you access to the Discord server where you can hang out with hundreds of really cool, like-minded Seahawks fans all day long. And today is a double pod Wednesday. It is also March 11th. Why does March 11th matter? Because this is the official start of the NFL league year. At 1 p.m. Pacific time today, it all becomes official. Teams have to get under the salary cap if they have not already done so. Teams who have agreed to terms with players, those contracts become official today. And maybe most importantly, based on the news of the last 12 hours or so, trades become official today at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And one of those trades that will not become official is Maxx Crosby to the Ravens. As you all have probably heard by now, the trade news heard round the world. The Baltimore Ravens backed out of their trade for Maxx Crosby last night, claiming that he failed his physical. He was part of the Ravens for 2 first-round picks, including the 14th overall pick this year in the draft. No longer. He is back with the Las Vegas Raiders. Those draft picks are back with the Baltimore Ravens. And if you listened to me on the Seahawks Collective last night, as this news was breaking, I had a theory about what was going on here. I thought that there was a decent chance that the Ravens realized that Trey Hendrickson's market was softer than anticipated, softer than they predicted it would be when they made this deal for Maxx Crosby last week. That's when they made this deal, right? So now you've got a situation where maybe there's a player you can get who isn't as good as Maxx Crosby, but he's pretty good. He's really good. And all you got to do is pay him and you get to keep your draft picks. And I think it's pretty obvious to just about everybody who's not in the pocket of the Ravens that the Ravens got cold feet. And I think that's putting it generously. I think the Ravens somewhat ruthlessly looked at the situation and said, the better football decision for this organization is to keep our first-round picks and to sign Trey Hendrickson. And that's exactly what they've done. They signed Trey Hendrickson this morning to a deal reported at, I've got it here, I think it's 4 years, $112 million. It can be worth up to $120 with incentives. That would bring it up to about a $30 million a year average. Right now, it's $28 million a year, which is less than Jalen Phillips signed for, by the way, in terms of average per year. But that's where things stand. And there's more. There's more to unravel here. So let me kind of keep unpacking what's going on here. And I already see people in chat that like, oh, he failed the physical. Why are you making this more than it is? It's not just me, by the way. A lot of people are having the same interpretation I am. The Ravens knew what his physical situation was before making the deal. All the teams in the league did. They didn't get necessarily, and there's no evidence that there was any new information as part of this physical. Maxx Crosby had a torn meniscus. He is in rehab. As far as like, I can go through and read to you, but I think that's kind of boring to listen to. But there have been multiple doctors, including the one who did the surgery, who've weighed in and say he is either on or ahead of schedule for his rehab. So I don't think that there's some, like, the most generous interpretation I can give for the Ravens is 2 first-round picks sets a bar for how clean you want the medicals to be. Because 2 first-round picks, including a top 15 overall pick, is a huge, huge amount of compensation to give up for anything, anyone. And so when you're staring that in the face, you want pristine medicals. And so maybe it's not to that level. And that is also, I would say, the Ravens are a team that just do not give up draft capital like this. They don't give up 1 first-round pick, let alone 2. And so my most generous interpretation is they had a very high bar for what the medicals had to say. It didn't reach that bar, and so they backed out. And if you want to believe that, fine. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter from a Seahawks perspective, from a Maxx Crosby perspective, why the Ravens did it. The deal's off. He's a Raider now. And there has been some harm done to the Ravens' reputation, to Eric DeCosta's reputation, to the Raiders' situation. Because as we've talked about over the course of the last couple days, the Raiders have been one of the most active teams in free agency. They had a lot of money to spend. And as I bring it up here for us all to look at together, this is a team that took Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens for $81 million. They signed Kwity Paye from the Colts for $48 million. Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker for 36 and 40. Jalen Naylor for 35. Eric Stokes for 30. Malcolm Kuntz, they re-signed for 11. They spent $281 million. And they traded for Taron Johnson. And they traded away Geno Smith. So there was some question, like, are they going to have to change anything with these deals that they negotiated for their free agents? Because taking back Maxx Crosby's, huge cap hit, how's that going to affect them? And actually, I can bring up real quick, I haven't done this yet for myself, so I am curious where the Raiders sit in terms of their cap situation. I'm going to look at over the cap. And Maxx Crosby's cap number is $36 million. Now, the Raiders still have cap space, so I don't think that that's the end of the world. I don't think they're going to have to renegotiate these deals. As far as it's been reported, they're not expecting to have to do that. And it is realistic that the Raiders could just say, you know what, we're going to keep Maxx Crosby. Like, there's not a financial reason why they can't. But that would be pretty unprecedented. When it gets to a point that a team is willing to part with their best player, and make no mistake about it, Maxx Crosby was the Raiders and is the Raiders' best player. When you get to that point, and then you actually consummate a deal, I don't believe for 1 second that both parties are okay just running it back. I don't believe it. I won't believe it until the first snap. I won't believe it until the start of the regular season. And what the Raiders are going to try to do, not surprisingly, is make everybody believe that they are fine with, yeah, we're fine. We'll keep Max if we have to. And I do not see it that way. So Albert Breer, who I think is great at what he does, but I think is carrying a little bit of water for the Raiders today. He tweeted at 4:05 a.m. And yes, I don't know about you guys, but daylight savings time has absolutely had a bonkers effect on my sleep schedule. I don't know why, but I'm not sleeping that well. Anyway, so I was up when this was happening. Albert Breer wrote, source, the Raiders will honor all agreements they made with free agents, both their own and incoming guys, over the last 48 hours, despite the stunning developments of last night. Then, and this is the one to pay attention to, all options remain in play with Maxx Crosby. Vegas is certainly very open to keeping him. Okay. Translation. We need the rest of the league to believe that we're open to keeping him and that we might keep him so we can recover as much as possible of Maxx Crosby's trade value. That's what that means. And they might be open to keeping him, but that's really nice PR spin. How we got here is Maxx Crosby's not open to staying with them. Now, he might say something else, but he's been very good in the press so far. But all signs are that Maxx Crosby wanted out. And all those stories came out after the trade, right? Diana Rossini, other people were talking about how this had become irreconcilable, right? I don't think all of a sudden is reconcilable. So where that leaves us is Maxx Crosby's on the market again. And some of you are like, oh my God, I'm so disappointed because Brian and other people kept talking about Maxx Crosby before and it was never going to happen. And now he's going to talk about it again. And I don't want him to talk about it. Well, sorry, I'm going to talk about it because my information, and this is through people I know somewhat close to the situation, may not be totally accurate. I'm not going to claim this is like a team source with the Raiders or anything like that. But my understanding is that the Jaguars, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Ravens were four of the teams that were most in on Crosby at the end. And the Cowboys, as of last night, multiple different reporters have said the Cowboys are out on Maxx Crosby. They have moved on. Now, let's look at this. Let's look at this with what the Cowboys have done as kind of an explanation for why. The Cowboys traded for an edge rusher, Rashawn Gary, from the Packers for a 4th-round pick. They have spent $92 million in signing additional free agents and franchise tagging George Pickens. And if you look at the Cowboys cap space, they are currently, as it stands, $3 million over the cap. So they're going to have to, I'm sure they've done a bunch of restructures. I'm not tracking restructures, but I'm actually going to pull this open real quick. Over the Cap has a nice thing where they'll show you restructure potential. And why don't I do this for you guys so you can see what I'm looking at here? So this is a nice little look at what Over the Cap has of restructure potential. And you can see, I'm going to scroll. So they have this column here. Well, simple restructure and maximum restructure are the two numbers to pay attention to. So if we look at this column right here and we go down to the Cowboys have not a lot, like relative to the rest of the league in terms of simple restructure, but there are obviously ways they can do it. So I don't believe that the Cowboys are, like, by all regards, going to be in on this. Then we can look at the Eagles, who to me make a lot of sense. And the Eagles, they've signed Tariq Woolen. They re-signed a tight end. They signed Johnny Munt, a tight end from the Jaguars, who was released. And they haven't spent a lot. So you're like, okay, this could be a team that makes sense. They lost Jalen Phillips. They lost a lot of these guys. In my mind, if I'm the Raiders, one of the best outcomes could be if you can get a first or a second round pick from the Eagles and get Jalen Carter or AJ Brown, that would make a lot of sense to me. The Raiders would be getting a player back that is of high value. The Eagles would be moving some cap because the Eagles only have $10 million in cap space. And when I look at the Eagles, like, I'm not sure I see, like, they only have $7 million in potential restructure. So that's, well, at least in terms of simple restructures, they have the least amount of wiggle room on restructuring contracts of any team in the NFL. Here, I'll show you guys this again. I didn't have the table sorted the right way last time. So if we look here, I'm in the way, so let me do this. If we look here, the Eagles are bottom. They are at the bottom of the league in terms of restructure potential. And also, if we go, let's go look at the Eagles real quick, and I'll zoom in so you guys can see here. If you were to trade AJ Brown, and trades like you see pre-June 1st, post-June 1st, you can play with that game on cutting a player. You can designate them as a post-June 1st cut, and that moves around where the cap is affected. With trades, you don't get to do that. If you trade the player before June 1st, it's a pre-June 1st trade. This would be pre-June 1st. And you look here at Jalen Carter, he would save $3.7 million. Well, you guys can't see what I'm seeing. Okay. You would save $3.7 million in cap space. That's not enough to fit, what you're going to be taking in with Maxx Crosby. If you were to trade AJ Brown, it would actually cost you $20 million in cap space. So I don't even know how that works. But I don't know, it makes sense to me why the Eagles would be the team that would go hard after Maxx Crosby. What I can't explain to you, and I'm sure maybe some of you can, maybe there's other cap experts that can explain this. I don't understand how the Eagles would have the cap space to make it all work. The Jaguars. Let's talk about the Jaguars for a second. All right. So I'm going to bring this back up again. And let's look at the Jaguars situation. So the Jags are also in a negative cap situation. They are negative $1 million. Not a lot, but a little. It's not like they've got a bunch of cap space. And the thing here is, if they were to make a trade, I believe Brian Thomas Jr. would be part of that deal. But that would only save $257,000 in cap space. It doesn't clear a lot of cap room. So that might mean that do they include Trayvon Walker in the deal? Clear $15 million. That would make some sense. Trayvon Walker and Brian Thomas Jr. plus a draft pick, maybe. I don't know if that's what would realistically be the deal, but I could wrap my head around that as a consolation prize for the Raiders. But the thing here is, you're going to see, I've even seen it in chat, the price is still 2 firsts. Well, no shit, that's what the Raiders are going to say. But you only get 2 first-round picks. They didn't get 2 first-round picks from the Ravens until the very end, when there was multiple teams bidding that drove the price up. Now you've got a bunch of teams that have made other moves and have moved on, including the team that paid the highest for him. They've already rescinded the trade. And the Dallas Cowboys were said to be the next closest team. They're said to not be in it. So I don't think it's realistic right now to assume that the Raiders are going to get 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. Now, I've seen people say, well, will they take a third or a second? Like, I think that's silly. They're not going to do that. But would they take 32 overall? Maybe. Would they take 32 overall and a second-round pick next year? They might. Or 32 and a third next year. I don't know. It's going to depend on what the market is, because I see people saying include Uchenna Nwosu. I mean, you could, but I don't think that's the plan. And I'm not sure that's really what the Raiders would be looking for either. I will look real quick. You would save $11.5 million in cap space if you included Uchenna Nwosu in the trade. But I don't think that. I mean, Uchenna Nwosu is. I mean, let me think about this for a second. I guess the way I look at it is he's younger than Maxx Crosby. He's certainly not as decorated of a player as Maxx Crosby. And I wonder, does it make sense at all for the Vikings? Like, because if they're looking to trade Jonathan Grenard, they're both, Uchenna Nwosu and Grenard are similar ages. The Vikings are also in cap hell. So I don't think so. But let's see, if they were to trade Grenard, that would save them 12.5 million roughly in cap space. So maybe the Vikings are an interesting team. But in any event, as it stands, I think the Seahawks might be one of the best positioned teams to make a deal for Maxx Crosby. For the same reasons I said last week, where I believe that the 32nd overall pick is not as valuable to the Seahawks in this draft as it would be in other drafts. I think Maxx Crosby is the single largest move the Seahawks could make this entire offseason to elevate their team. Not just run it back, but be better. Be better than they were a year ago. I think it's the one move that they could make that would raise their ceiling the highest of any other move. And I think he's a perfect fit personality-wise, scheme-wise, need-wise, or at least like where they would benefit the most. Great as a run defender, one of the best, if not the best edge run defenders for years. I just think it makes a lot of sense. So does it mean it's going to happen? I don't know. I'm not going to claim that I do. But the breadcrumbs certainly lead me down a path where this makes sense. And I think the market could be falling back into John Schneider and Mike McDonald's laps. And it would be a little interesting. The Seahawks gain with Mike McDonald was the Ravens' loss. Could Maxx Crosby be another gain for the Seahawks at the Ravens' loss? I'm not going to argue that Trey Hendrickson and 2 first-round picks is worth more than Maxx Crosby, because I think it's pretty clear that generally that is. But I have a feeling that there might be a little bit of remorse among Ravens fans if Maxx Crosby goes on and wins a Super Bowl and plays all pro level football. And I know that he has had some fall off the last couple of years as a pass rusher. Not going to try to deny that. But I just don't know if you can underestimate the implications of the grind he was in playing on such a terrible team with such little help for so long. And the boost it could be to play for a Mike McDonald defense next to Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed and Riley Mills and maybe DeMarcus Lawrence and maybe Uchenna Nwosu and Derrick Hall. Like, is a very different situation for Maxx Crosby. And I would not assume that he would be the same player with the Seahawks that he had been with the Raiders. And I mean that in a positive light. So, yeah, in my mind, this still makes a lot of sense. And I mentioned this is a double pod Wednesday. We will do a real Hawk Talk tonight. We will have Evan Hill and Jeff Simmons on with me tonight. Can't wait for that. Going to be fun. And I've asked Evan to do a little bit of homework on the cap situation because for the Seahawks, I believe there's no question that they want to extend JSN and Devin Witherspoon. What I've been asking out loud, more than others, I believe, is this the right time to do it, at least for JSN? Because what some people don't understand is that when they do those extensions for JSN and Devin Witherspoon, but especially JSN, it is going to bump up his cap hit potentially significantly this year. And so, like, for example, like JSN was drafted 20th overall. So his salary cap hit is lower than Devin Witherspoon, who is a top 5 pick. Devin Witherspoon already has a $10 million cap hit this year before any extension. Jackson Smith and Jigba has a $4.5 million cap hit. If you were to extend him, I think I can maybe do a little bit of fun. Let me see if I can make this. Let me see if I can make this work. Contract calculator. I've never done this. We'll do this real time. Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. And oh, this looks ugly. You have to put way too much into this. I don't want to do it. The math I had done with another site before, where I'd given JSN like a $41 million APY, which would set the new standard, which I think he's going to do anyway. And it backloaded the cap hit. You're going to always want to backload that because the cap is going to continue to rise. So take your cap hits later. And it still raised his overall cap hit for this coming season, 2026, by like $15 million. So all of that's to say, Evan's going to do a little work. My understanding is it would be pretty easy to restructure Maxx Crosby's deal to dramatically reduce his cap hit this year. It would also potentially be easy for the Seahawks just to put the 5th-year option on JSN and or Devin Witherspoon. And I think it makes the most sense with JSN because of the cap hit differential. And then just sign him next year. Like, he's not going anywhere. There's no risk to doing this. Oh, the cap's his price is going to go up. Not really. Like, Puka Nakua's price, yes, maybe Puka Nakua sets a new market. Maybe he's 43 million. I don't know, whatever. He sets a new number. I don't personally think it's going to go up that much anyway. There's no one else that's going to raise it above that. And so what? Like, if you pay $4 million, if let's say you spend $3 million APY more than you would have otherwise, that's noise when it comes to the cap itself is going to continue to rise and teams are going to be able to and asked to spend more money. So I think there is absolutely no need to extend JSN before this season. Other than you just get to check it off your list. JSN feels valued and all that stuff. He's going to get his money. I wouldn't worry about that. So, yeah, I guess when I kind of add all this up, it's going to be fun to watch for who knows how long. I mean, it's not crazy to think that Crosby could be traded again today. Like, it could be that the Raiders feel that motivated. I wouldn't be surprised if they want to try to wait it out to see to prove to teams that they can hold their water and that that really are being serious, that they can, keep Maxx Crosby with them. But it also wouldn't surprise me if a team came in, gave them a deal they like, and they make it and they move on. Best guess is that Crosby will be traded again like this week or next week. That's my best guess. And the longer it draws out, I believe the better the chances are for the Seahawks. Because that will mean the Raiders are not getting the deals that they like. And it'll start making the Seahawks deal, whatever they are willing to offer, look better. So interesting. I'm going to start a poll because I'm really curious your thoughts on this. You're not on YouTube watching. You should be over there watching. It's the best place to watch. How do we want to ask this question? What am I curious about? I think if I asked, do you want to trade for Maxx Crosby? It's going to be like almost everybody saying yes. Let's make it a little bit harder. Would you trade 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby? Let's start there. I'm going to see what people say. This would be 32 overall this year and your first-round pick next year. Would you make that trade? And and the way you should think about this is if that's the only trade you could make that would net Maxx Crosby, would you make it? If that's the only one you can make. And I also would put in there, what if the Rams are a team that gets involved? What if you're bidding against the Rams or the 49ers? What if getting Maxx Crosby means that you're keeping him from some of your biggest competition? The Eagles would be another one. As of right now, 200 plus votes in, 61% of you have said no. You would not trade 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. So 40% say yes, 60% say no. Interesting. Let's ask a different question. Let's ask a question of, would you trade your 2026 first round pick and Uchenna Nwosu for Maxx Crosby? Let's see, that'd be 1 first round pick and Uchenna Nwosu. This one is not surprisingly coming in at very popular. Already a couple hundred votes. 81% say yes. Okay. I'm going to ask one more question here, and I think I know the answer to this one as well, but I'm curious. Would you trade your first and Derrick Hall for Maxx Crosby? This is a harder one. I think I know the answer to this one from you all, but I'm curious what you say. With 200 plus votes in, it is 66% say no. Yeah, that's what I figured. I'm gonna ask one more just to get a feel for everybody here. Would you trade a 2026 first and a 2027 second for Maxx Crosby? Curious how much it's about the two firsts that has people feeling skittish. Generally, like, you have to trade something that hurts to get something that's really good. You don't generally just get some kind of screaming deal. It's interesting. So 82% say yes. I gotta tell you, folks, that does not make sense. It does not make sense that 60% of you said you wouldn't trade two firsts, but 80% say you would trade a first and a second. There's only one round difference there. So it shouldn't be so obvious to do one and so against doing the other. That doesn't really make sense. But good to know. Good to know what people believe and where folks are on this. All right. I'm going to take some super chats here. Before I do that, if you have not recently been over to simplyseattle.com, now is a great time to go over there. Use code HawkBlogger15, get 15% off all your favorite Seahawks, Mariners, Seattle sports gear that's out there. Go to simplyseattle.com, use code HawkBlogger15. Also, check out what is going to be a grand opening of their new store in University District. Open it up, I think, this week. So make sure you check that out. And if you have not bought We Did Not Care, my book, you can still get it. Hawkblogger.com/book. Would love to add more people. I've been getting a lot of nice feedback from folks. It's really great. I think we even got our first review over there on Amazon, which I appreciate. 5-star review on Amazon. Love a few more 5-star reviews. If you guys can help me out on Amazon, I'd appreciate it. So yeah, cool stuff going on. All right, so let me get to these super chats. Before I do that, I got to take a little swig of water. My voice is wavering a little bit after 3 days of many hours of podcasting. All right. So Peter Go Hawks, Nwosu in the 32nd pick for Max. Let's go. Yeah, well, Peter was clearly in the yes column on that one. Jonathan Smith says, don't trade for Max. I want young, talented players. I actually think that we need to look at trading Witherspoon or JSN. It's going to be rough to keep both of them and keep the trenches full. Yee, man, I don't know if I can disagree more with something than that, but I don't know why you need to trade JSN or Witherspoon. Your trenches are in fine shape. Now, maybe, like, I think there's an assumption there, like, well, you're going to have to extend Leonard Williams. This is his last year of his deal. You don't know that Leonard Williams is going to play after this year. He might retire. I was a little wondering if he's going to retire after last year. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to retire next year if he doesn't retire this year. Uchenna Nwosu will not be part of your team next year unless you extend him. You got plenty of money to go spend or develop. You also got Riley Mills and Byron Murphy in the trenches already. Brandon Peely will likely be back. You've got the third youngest starting offensive line in the NFL, at least going into last year. That's going to keep getting better. They're all under contract pretty much. So I'm sorry. I just don't agree on almost any of that. Peter Go Hawk says 100% agree. Picks back and Trey benefits the Ravens. I was getting back to my old thing that I said. Peter says, do you think Clint Kubiak would do a deal with Seattle to make them better after they won the Super Bowl last year? It makes us pretty unstoppable. In my opinion, go all in. I don't think Clint Kubiak would have anything to do with it other than he will be asked, like, what do you think of Uchenna Nwosu? Or what do you like? Who should we be getting from the Seahawks? He'll have some insights into that. But this would be a John Spytek thing. I have wondered, Spytek, like, was forced I think, in some ways, to hire Pete Carroll, who I don't think he wanted. He went along with. Then, because of that, was kind of pushed to trade for Geno Smith, gave up a third-round pick. I don't think he really wanted that. Gave him a big extension. I don't think he really wanted that. And I wonder if there's a little bit of, I'd rather not make the Seahawks better or look bad trading to the Seahawks again. That would be a human response. It would not be a good business response, but it could be in there somewhere. James Cooper says, we played with fire 3 times before and been burned. Percy, Jimmy, Jamal, no more firsts for superstar players. I got to say, James, that is like a logic fallacy. If you flip a coin and you get 3 heads, that doesn't mean it's going to be likely to get heads the next time. And that's not to say it's a 50-50 chance when you make a trade that involves a first round pick, but it's not 100-0. That's not how probabilities work. So the same way that the Seahawks, you could say, man, the Seahawks kept their first round pick for all these years and they made really bad decisions. They're going to make another bad decision. That's proven not to be true. When the Seahawks never draft a corner before the 4th round. And then they draft Devin Witherspoon over 5th overall. That can't make sense. Well, it did. It worked. They had never drafted a defensive tackle before, the 2nd round. They drafted Byron Murphy in the 1st. It worked. Your process can improve, and it has improved for the Seahawks. There are players that it makes sense to do for. There are players it doesn't. I generally believe that it matters what position you're making the trade for, the player you're making the trade for, the position of the picks. You're literally the last pick in the 1st round. It's basically a 2nd round pick. And where you are in your, contention cycle. This is not like the Percy Harvin trade. And it's also like Percy Harvin and Jimmy Graham. What do those 2 guys have in common? They are skill players away from the trenches. What does Jamal Adams have in common with those guys? Away from the trenches. And part of why I came out against the Jimmy Graham trade the day that it was made and got a lot of hate for being against it was I just don't believe you trade trench for skill. I don't think that's the way you win in the NFL. And trading away Max Unger, who is a key part of that leadership, part of that offense, part of that team in general, for a finesse player in Jimmy Graham, I think made the Seahawks weaker, less tough overnight. And ultimately, I believe that mattered. And trading for Maxx Crosby does not make you less tough. Trading for Maxx Crosby does not make you less intimidating, easier to play against. It does not move your money away from the trenches. As I've said before, the 3 things that ultimately generally decide who's going to ultimately raise the Lombardi Trophy are coach, quarterback, and pass rush. There's other things that matter, but those are the things that generally matter the most. And Maxx Crosby would be an absolute addition in that regard. So do you have to be careful about trading 1st-round picks? 100%. Do you have to be even more careful about trading 2 1st-round picks? Yes, you do. But I do believe that Maxx Crosby is a guy you got to consider that for. American Facts says, realistically, where is Max going? Well, I think we just talked about that. DSP, Derrick Hall won't be resigned, so why not? Well, to spell this out, I think what you're saying is Derrick Hall is in the final year of his contract. He does not have a 5th-year option available because he is a 2nd-round pick, not a 1st-round pick. You only get 5th-year options on 1st-round picks. So the logic here is include him in the deal for Maxx Crosby because he doesn't have a contract beyond this year anyway. There is some logic to that. I still believe extending Derrick Hall and keeping Derrick Hall would be one of the smarter moves the Seahawks could make. I think part of the logic here would be to have Crosby and Hall be your cornerstone bookend edge rushers for the next at least 2 to 3 years. And then you can fill in with guys behind them, Connor O'Toole, Jared Ivey. Like this year, you'd have, hopefully, Chenna Nwosu, DeMarcus Lawrence. But yeah, I understand where you're going. I think ideally you get to keep Derrick Hall. Peter's back. He says, sign JSN now, 5 years, $204 million before Puka. I don't give a single shit about when Puka signs. I don't think it matters. I think people are making way too big of a deal of that. American Facts has become a member. Well, welcome to the crew, man. Great to have you. Anthony Sandoval says, what's the holdup on a running back? Why not Rachaad White? Well, let's take a quick look at the running back market and go over to my position tracker here, and we'll go to running back. All right. So I made a little improvement to this last night. Hopefully you can tell, but this is now sorting the signed players by average APY. And I think Rachaad White's probably going to come in somewhere in the Kenneth Gainwell, Rico Dowdle number, between 6 to 7 million. I still think the Tyler Algier number is the craziest number out there. Isaiah Pacheco's number came in for the Lions, 1.8 million. Crazy how cheap that guy is. But anyway, I mean, I think Rachaad White is fine. He's not explosive at all. That does not excite me. I would be so much more excited about a guy like Keaton Mitchell, who, by the way, can't be signed by another team until the league year begins. So all the restricted free agents, I should have said that before. All the restricted free agents officially become available at 1 p.m. Pacific time today, unless they've been tendered. So as a reminder for the Seahawks, you go back to this and share with you guys which guys are in that boat for the Seahawks, right? So as we look here, you've got Cody White, Brandon Peely, Brady Russell, I don't think Derek Young, Jake Bobo, Chris Stoll, I think AJ Finley, and maybe it's Chaz Surratt. I think those are your restricted free agents. And no, actually, I think one of those guys isn't. These 3 for sure. These 2 for sure. I think AJ Finley, but I'm not positive. Anyway, Drake Thomas was, and you already signed him. So unless the Seahawks put a tender on any of these guys, which I don't think they're going to, then they will become officially free agents, unrestricted free agents at 1 o'clock today. They can sign with any team. Keaton Mitchell is a restricted free agent as well. It is said that they are not going to tender him. So he is going to become available at 1 p.m. We'll find out. The Giants were rumored to be in on him. Don't know where he will end up. Sean Tucker, again, another guy that I'm kind of interested in. So I'm just not Rachaad White's fine. I like a little bit more explosive ability in my backs, especially in like a wide zone scheme where you're trying to get to the edge, and speed does matter. But, if they go Rachaad White, he is a floor raising signing. And I just don't think there's a lot of urgency because it's not a position that's valued that highly. And people feel like they can get, like, they'll find players later in the market that kind of fit their needs. So that's my thought there. Hawk Skull says, most important Crosby question. If we do sign Maxx, who will wear 98 next year? Will Riley Mills give it up or will Maxx have to change? I think we know the answer to that. Although 98 looks really good on Riley Mills. It really does. So that would be a shame. Scott Dobson says, so we are assuming that Baltimore is wrong in their evaluation of Crosby's health. You cannot pay nearly this much unless you are almost certain. I'm not assuming that they're wrong in their evaluation of Crosby's health. I think they are being disingenuous in their evaluation of his health. I don't think they learned anything that they didn't already know. I believe either that or they had very unrealistic expectations of what a guy coming off a meniscus surgery would look like at this stage. And all I'm saying is that was their out, was the physical. And they took it. Plain and simple. Ethically, not great. It's not a good look. And it's not just my opinion, although that is my opinion. There are a lot of people across the league saying the exact same thing. So I think this was a pretty unethical decision from Eric DeCosta and the Ravens. Also, pretty good from a football perspective. Reminder that in chat, please no all caps. We want everybody's words to be at the same volume, not having anybody try to stick out from others. This is just part of the way I run my chat. So I appreciate you guys honoring those guidelines. James Cooper says, genuinely believe Kenny Mack is a legit running back one option. James, you and I see things differently, man. I think that's pretty clear at this point. I like Kenny McIntosh. I liked what I saw from him in camp. He's had 2 serious injuries. He's never really gotten on the field in the regular season. I just don't think you can say that's your running back one. Now, it would be great if any of the guys that they currently have, Jacardier Wright, Kenny McIntosh, Velus Jones, Cam Akers, George Halani, if any of those guys blossomed into a true featured back, I just don't think you can count on it. Don't think you can count on it. So some other news came down while I was talking here. The Colts have extended Daniel Jones on a 2-year deal. So they avoid the franchise, the transition tag, I think is what they'd given him. Running back Bam Knight has returned to the Cardinals. How many running backs do they need? James Conner, Tyler Algier, Trey Benson, Bam Knight. I don't know, man. I do wonder if this means Trey Benson's going to be let go. Like, I just don't understand why you need all those running backs. There was one signing that will not get anyone's attention, but it got mine. Chargers re-signed Del'Shawn Phillips. Why do I care? He has been a second-team All-Pro special teams player, and he set the Chargers single-season record for special teams tackles. So I've been curious what Brady Russell's cost would be. Del'Shawn Phillips signed a 2-year, $7.5 million contract. Sorry, I'm going to clear my throat real quick. All right. So 2 years, $7.5 million contract. That's, interestingly, at least to me, works out to $3.75 million per year. What is the restricted free agent right of first refusal tender? It's $3.5 million. So a little bit more than the tender on a 2-year deal. That could be a look at what Brady Russell is going to get from the Seahawks. We'll see. I do see that someone in chat was talking about Alvin Kamara as well. That's another name I brought up, I think, very likely is going to be made available by the the Saints. And I think is a perfectly fine bridge back. Is he the same player he was? No. But he is just 1 year removed from being still a very productive running back. And he's a guy that I think would find new motivation in coming here to win his first ring, the same way Rashid Shaheed got to do that. And I think that that's an underrated part of adding a player like Maxx Crosby and a player like Alvin Kamara is that one of the things that happens when you win a Super Bowl is all those people that have come back, they don't have necessarily the same level of hunger. I'm not saying that they're like going to be apathetic, but there's a little bit of your thirst has been quenched once you get the one ring. Having new guys come in who are as desperate this year as you were last year to get that first ring, it's helpful. I think it's a good thing. And they're willing to do things. They're willing to say things. They're willing to just remind people about how much this means. And I think having that energy is good. Having that energy is good. All right. Let me look, see if there's some other things. There's a bunch of stuff to talk about here, but let me just take a quick look. Remind myself. Okay. Comp picks. People have been curious about compensatory picks. Nick Corti at NICKKORTE does a great job of this for Over the Cap. And his projection is that the Seahawks would get 4 comp picks. He's got them getting a 4th round pick for Boye Mafe, a 5th for Kobe Bryant, a 5th for Ken Walker. And then he says that they are going to get an Eagles, like one of the comp picks that was designated for Philadelphia would go to the Seahawks. And you don't know for sure. It would either be a 6th or a 5th for Woolen. And it depends a little bit because Reek Woolen's deal with the Eagles is 1 year, $12 million, but can be up to $15 million with incentives. If he meets the incentives, it would probably be a 5th round comp pick. If he doesn't, it would probably be a 6th round comp pick. And again, that if the Seahawks sign a Rachaad White, it would probably cancel out one of those. So anyway, that's where the things stand with the comp picks. What else? Sorry, I'm looking through here. Looking through my own timeline to make sure I didn't forget anything that I've already. Oh, Jonathan Grenard. A lot of people keep asking about Jonathan Grenard. I'll say this, what I've said again. I don't think he makes sense for Seattle. Jonathan Grenard wants a new contract. John Schneider does not give players that he trades for a new contract until after the season. That doesn't match. And I'm not so sure Jonathan Grenard is worth and has earned a higher deal, a bigger deal than he's currently on, which is why the Vikings are willing to trade him, because they're like, we think we've got you on a very reasonable deal for both sides. If you don't, then maybe you're better off somewhere that does. So I don't think it makes sense. But what Jonathan Grenard is interesting to monitor is the Eagles, to me, make a ton of sense for Jonathan Grenard. Ton of sense. I think he fits the scheme well. I think that you could trade a 3rd round pick maybe for him. And if the Eagles do that, then they're officially out of the Maxx Crosby market, which is the more people that get out, the better it is for if you're wanting the Seahawks to be one of the teams that gets him, that has a chance, then that would be good news. Yeah. I'm reading from Mike Silver, who just published an hour ago in The Athletic. Quote here from a high-ranking league exec who inquired about trading for Maxx Crosby. I don't know what they do now. I don't know how they walk it back. There's no way to spin it positively. This is really bad for them. Yeah, no shit. It's bad for everybody. Well, bad for the Ravens and the Raiders. So I want to look at this article real quick in real time with you guys to see if there's anything in here about what's in here. So Silver writes, this wasn't a gut punch. This was a blindside blow to the ribs that inflicted debilitating damage and pain that will reverberate for weeks and months to come. The Raiders now enter a new league year with significantly reduced with a significantly reduced hand, either needing to find another trade partner while possessing far less leverage, or to try to persuade Crosby to change his mind and return for an 8th season. In any case, those 2 first-round picks are gone, and nothing's going to bring them back. He continues to write, Silver writes, there's no way to portray this as anything but a lousy development for the Raiders, whose powers that be are understandably furious about the deal's collapse. Yeah. In the end, it doesn't really matter. The Ravens were within their rights to kill the deal because it hadn't been consummated. Raiders have no recourse and no way to recreate the value that interested teams, including the Cowboys, Patriots, and Bears, had assigned to Crosby before all hell broke loose. Now I'm going to see if there's anything in here about where he thinks there might be. So what now? Theoretically, the Raiders could resume trade talks with the Ravens, albeit at a lower price point. I don't know. That's not going to happen. The Raiders aren't in a great spot. Their best play is to ignore compulsion, to wallow in victimhood, and try to make the best of a bad situation. If they can't convince Crosby to come back, the smart move will be to cut their losses and try to get what they can for him. We're going to look at the Patriots in a second here. Finding a sweet spot will be tricky because the potential deal now carries a glaring buyer beware warning. Imagine being the general manager who, after Tuesday news, decides to gamble on a Crosby trade only to have the player be significantly debilitated by the knee and never come close to regaining his form. An executive said, if that happens, you're done. Cowboys are not expected to be in. Wow. Such a fun ride. But let's look at the Patriots. Let's look at the Patriots because that's a team we hadn't talked about. Patriots have already gone out and signed Elijah Vera Tucker for $48 million, Romeo Doubs, a wide receiver, for $70 million, Draymond Jones, the edge player that we all know, for $39.5 and fullback Reggie Gilliam for $12. So they spent $170 million. Where are the Patriots against the cap? I believe they're not in a great cap situation, but I could be wrong. Why is this not in alphabetical order? This is annoying. There they are. Okay. Patriots. Actually, no, the Patriots are okay cap-wise. They got $31 million in cap. So, as I look here, Patriots sits with effective cap space. Patriots are like 10th. Seahawks, by the way, are 5th. 5th in the NFL in cap space. The Chargers are 2nd. I know the Chargers made a number of deals already. So, yeah, they spent $140 million. They brought back Khalil Mack. I was just wondering, like, you've had these Mike McDonald defenses crave Maxx Crosby. That's Mike McDonald. That is Minter, who got hired to be the Ravens head coach. Could the Chargers be another team? I don't think so with what they've done. They did lose Odafe Owe. But that might be another team that maybe jumps in. I don't know. The Commanders are a team that could have made some sense, but they signed Odafe Oweh. They signed Clavon Chason from the Patriots today. They signed Tim Settle. They spent $185 million. So maybe not. Just double checking new news as we keep going through the morning here. Yeah, I mean, nothing exciting in that regard. But this is something I was sharing with you guys yesterday. There's another look, an updated look at this. So this is looking at how much has been lost, at least in terms of how much has been spent on the players that were on your team before. And the Ravens have lost 8 players that have been paid $223 million, most in the NFL. Packers have lost 5 players that totaled 212. Eagles have lost 7 players, total 196 million. Chargers have lost 4 at 163. The Seahawks have lost 4 at 160. So the Seahawks players that they've lost have been valued 4th most. And really, if you go by average per player, the Seahawks are basically they've been valued at a very high level, high quality player from the NFL's perspective. The only 2 teams that have not lost a single player are the Rams and the Cowboys. It says $0 million for the Raiders, but that's because I think we don't know the price that was paid yet for that player, but they've lost somebody. So interesting that the Rams and the Cowboys, none of their free agents have been appealing enough for anybody to sign. Now, if you look at the price of players added, and this is only external free agents. This isn't re-signing your own players. So for the Seahawks, Rashid Shaheed would not count, or, Josh Jobe would not count. The Titans have added 5 players for $254 million. This is external players. The Raiders, 5 players, $240 million. Commanders, 5 players, $178 million. Panthers, 4 at $170. Patriots, 4 at $170. Saints, 5 at $170. So like a lot of big spenders toward the top. The only one of those that was, really good was the Patriots, at least making it to the Super Bowl. The Panthers did make the playoffs, but as we saw, we're not very good. But if you scroll all the way down, there are 3 teams left who have not signed any external free agents. The Seattle Seahawks, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Denver Broncos have spent exactly $0 on external free agents. I think that is a pretty good indicator on the quality of your roster and that you like your players better than you like players from the rest of the league. And while people have this woe is me, the sky is falling with the Seahawks losing players, what I think fails to be considered in that evaluation is that the Seahawks like their players better than they like other teams' players. And I think they just won a Super Bowl. So I think they have a pretty good idea who they got in that locker room. All right. Let me see if there are more super chats here. Let's go. Super Sauce XL, Mr. Stan Darnold says, any thoughts on what Hawks will do with their cap space now? Had seen somewhere that they needed to spend a good bit this year with the CBA rules. Seahawks aren't going to have trouble spending their cap. They are going to extend players that they need to extend. They will, that could even be Uchenna Nwosu, who I've argued as recently as this Saturday. I thought my offseason plan included an extension for Uchenna Nwosu. So I think they've got plenty of opportunities to pay guys, and that's never a problem. Spending is never a problem. Managing your spend is a problem. And you are right. They do have to meet a minimum to get there. James Cooper says, I know we haven't agreed on our takes, but still appreciate the healthy football discussion and content you provide. Go Hawks, world champs. Yeah, no hard feelings, man. Like, and no shade meant. You and I just have had different opinions on a couple things, but you never have to feel bad about that. That's what's fun about sports. Like, we can argue like vehemently about that is stupid. That is ridiculous. You're crazy. And it's not personal. Like, it's one of the only places in the world, like the only things in the world that you can have aggressive debates and disagreements on, and it's not personal. Like, I wish there was more of that in the world. It's Zeke, who's been a member for 6 months, says, thanks for all the hard work you do. Love the show. It's safe to say that the Ravens will have a very hard time getting free agents to agree to come to Baltimore. LOL. I saw this elsewhere, and I had to kind of laugh at this. People are literally saying this the same day they just signed Trey Hendrickson to a 4-year, $120 million contract. Didn't seem like it was hard for them. Literally the same 24-hour period that they made this decision to sign a free agent. I think agents are going to take their money like they would anyone else. Now, I think that maybe you don't do a deal with them during the legal tampering period because you have this buffer where teams can change their mind. But even during the normal league year, you still get to do a physical. And if they fail a physical, the trade can be nullified. And this is not the first time that the Ravens have done something like this. Will Compton on Twitter talked about a receiver that had signed with the Ravens years ago who signed a relatively big deal. And sorry, just making sure I'm not needed elsewhere. Had signed a pretty big deal. And then Michael Crabtree got released by another team. And the Ravens voided the deal with the player they had signed the contract for so they could go after someone else. It's within the rules. So as much as I see ethical issues with it, it's within the rules. They're playing within the rules. So, yeah. All right. I think that was it on Super Chats there. Let me check Venmo real fast. Venmo.com/Brian-Nemhauser. Always appreciate when people do Super Chats anywhere, especially appreciate people that take the time to go over to Venmo, as 100% of that goes to the show, where on YouTube, which is still great, but 30% of YouTube Super Chats go to YouTube and Google. All right. No new Super Chats over there. So we're going to call that a wrap. We're going to call that a wrap on this episode. There's so much more to go through. We will continue to do it. We have Real Hawk Talk coming up for you tonight. I believe it'll be 5 p.m. Pacific time. But appreciate that. I will say I see a little bit of back and forth in the chat with our moderators. Please don't hassle the mods. They do this out of their own kindness of their own hearts and their time. It's my rules. If you don't like the rules, you kind of come with me. And if you're going to be unkind to either the mods or other people, guests, myself, then you're just going to get banned. Like, this is not the place for you. And that's fine. You can go somewhere else. But we are going to keep our chat about football. We're going to keep it friendly. And we're going to have no all caps. It's not a lot of rules, but those are the ones. All right. See y'all later today, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show. Take care.